everybody, today I wanted to talk to you about how to find an editor for your book. Now the first thing that I wanted to say is that it is absolutely essential, in my opinion, to work with a professional editor. A professional editor will make sure that your book is as good as it possibly can be, and it also helps your book to be professional and to be competitive with other books, including those that have been traditionally published. So you really want to work with a professional editor. And I know that it's expensive, particularly if you've written a long book, if you've written a novel, but it's something that you have to budget for. It's part of the investment in the project. So I'm going to run through in this video the different kinds of editing and then how to find somebody, the right person to work with on your project. So to start with, the different kinds of editing range from the big picture stuff, so looking more at your story, all the way through to kind of the nuts and bolts of grammar and spelling. So to start off with, if we go with that big picture, you might want to work with a developmental editor. Now you don't have to work with all of these different kinds of editor. It depends on what your manuscript needs and what your budget allows. Some people have all the different stages of editing. Some people choose the ones that are going to help them the most. But the first potential stage is a developmental editor. They will help you to structure your story, to make sure that everything that needs to be there is there, and also that anything that's kind of excess is not there anymore. They will help you with characterization, they will help you with how your story flows. So if you feel that that's something that you need some help with, then that's who you need to pay to do that. The next stage is what's called a copy editor. Now a copy editor will look more at your use of language. Are you consistent with the way that you're using language? How does your writing flow? They will also pick up a bit of spelling and grammar. And often there is some overlap. So a copy editor might comment on bits of your story. A developmental editor might pick up some spelling and grammar and word use stuff, but they're going to be focusing on that specific point. So your copy editor is kind of looking at your language. Then, traditionally, the last stage of editing is proofreading. A proofreader generally looks at your manuscript when it's all done, so it's formatted and everything. They're going to look for any typos, any mistakes, any grammar, anything like that that's been missed, or things that have happened during formatting. So if a paragraph has accidentally been copied, or if there's a widow or orphan line going onto the next page, so where you just have one line of text that's gone onto the next page. They will look at things like your page numbering. They're going to make sure that there are no mistakes. So, like I said, you can use all three of these types of editing. You can use a couple of them. It depends on what you feel that you need the most, what you need the most support with, and what your budget allows. So, the cost then, you're generally looking somewhere between about £30 to £40 an hour. There are usually, you can find online guides to what editors should be charging, which will help you to see if the person you work with is charging you fairly. But you're looking in that kind of ballpark. And obviously if you've written a children's book, then that's a lot cheaper because it may only take your editor an hour to look at it. Whereas if you're looking at a novel, that's going to cost you a lot more and might be 20 hours of work. And it will depend on the level of editing they're doing and the amount of work that your manuscript needs. So it is a little bit variable, but you can get a bit of an idea by knowing what editors traditionally charge, and the different levels have slightly different price points. I will link below to a UK guide for what editors charge. So I'm going to move on to how to find the right person to work with. Some people do work with more than one editor, so for your different levels, if you're having more than one type of editing done to your manuscript, you might choose to have different people do those because different people find different things. Or you might just work with one person, it's up to you. But the first place that I would go to look for an editor is your kind of national institute or professional body for editors. So in the UK, that's the Chartered Institute of Editors and Proofreaders. It used to be called the Society for Editors and Proofreaders. I will link it below, but if you're in a different country, there'll be a similar organisation. And the thing I like about that is that to be listed on their site, they have to probably pay a fee and also have a certain level of training. And I also think that if they're part of a society, if they kind of are in any kind of disrepute, then it's likely that they will not be part of that society anymore. So it acts as a way of you making sure that the person that you are looking at working with is going to do the work, is going to do it well. You need to be able to trust the person that you're thinking of working with. So that's where I like to begin. You might also want to look on a site like Readsy. So Readsy is really great for finding freelancers for your book projects, or maybe something like LinkedIn, and you can search for editors and see if you find someone on there. Now, if I was using the CIEP website, what I would do is put into the search terms the type of editing that I want and also anything genre specific, because editors only generally work with a certain type of book. So you may find editors that work with children's books. They may only work, or they might specialise in rhyme, for example, or they might not. You might want to work with someone who works with non-fiction or fiction, or they specialise in fantasy, or they have a particular interest. So for example, for my book Milk, because it's about breastfeeding, I looked for somebody who had edited things to do with breastfeeding before, because she would be able to have kind of an insight into what I was saying, and just that extra level of kind of interest and specialism. So you're not just looking for, I want a developmental editor, you're looking for, I want a developmental editor to work in this kind of genre of book. Narrow down your search until you find some professionals that fit the bill as best as possible, and then you need to start looking into them a little bit more. So the first thing I would do is have a look at their websites, find out more about them, see what information is on there. If it seems like it's still the right kind of fit, they probably will also have testimonials on their website, so you can get a feel for who they've worked with and what those people have said. Testimonials are obviously always positive, but still, it gives you a feel. So once you've kind of had a look, and that might help you to narrow your search down a little bit more, once you've had a look in some more detail, you then need to start contacting people. So what they will generally ask for is a sample of your book, so that they can get an idea of what it is that you need. So how much editing your book is going to need, what kind of story it is, that kind of thing. So when you reach out initially, you need to let them know, this is the kind of book, I'm looking for this kind of editing and this kind of timescale. And they can come back and say, oh, okay, yes, I'm interested. Please send me a sample of your work so that I can find out a bit more. From your little sample that you sent them, they should be able to figure out an approximate cost, because they should then know how many hours roughly that project will take, which enables them to give you a good quote. So then you can compare the different correspondences you have with them. I always like to look at how well I've communicated with them. I think it's really important with an editor that this is somebody who's going to be criticising your writing, and you need to be able to communicate with them well. Now, what you might like to do, particularly if you're finding it hard to choose, is you might ask for a sample edit. So let's say you've narrowed it down to 3 people. You may send a chapter to each of those 3 people, pay them for an hour's work and say, could you please edit this? And then that gives you a chance to have a look. How many errors did they catch? How did they communicate that with you? How do you feel about the way that they edited that work? And that might help you to pick out the differences between them. But if you ask for a sample edit, you will have to pay for it, and it depends if you have the budget for that. So once you've done all of this, you've communicated with them, you've had a bit of back and forth, you've done a bit of research about them, you may have had a sample edit, you should have a whole load of information about a few people that will help you to decide which one you want to work with. Now, don't automatically go for the cheapest one. I know it's tempting when indie publishing is so expensive, but you need to be looking at lots of different factors. So how well fitted are they to your project? How well do you communicate with them? As well as obviously, what have they quoted? So all in all, once you look at that big picture, you can then contact the one that you've decided to work with and say, yes, I'd like to go forward with this. Do make sure that you draw up a contract between you to make sure that you have an agreement on when you're going to pay them and when the work is going to be carried out. And that is a point to make, actually, that a lot of editors get booked up in advance, and you may find that you find the perfect editor, but they can't fit you in for another 6 months or another year, and it doesn't fit in with your publishing timeline. Do start looking for an editor ahead of time, because they do get booked up months in advance. But you'll find the right person who fits in with your timeline, who fits into your budget, and who fits your manuscript perfectly. And like I said, once you've narrowed that person down, then you can get in touch with them, draw up a contract and begin work together. So I hope you have found all of that information useful. Do hit like if you did find it helpful, and please subscribe for more videos like this one. Take care.